Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body Broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we're going to talk about another food selection topic, and not food selection like you guys may be thinking, if you should do flexible dieting or clean eating or whatever you want to call it. I know we've talked about that before. We're actually going to talk, I would say we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the details and talk about some other subtopics like organic foods, GMOs, fresh and frozen, free range, pastured, there's all kinds of good stuff. We'll maybe sprinkle in a little bit of supplementation talk depending on our time frame. Just some things that people don't necessarily consider. So we can kind of help navigate the store, because now, at least here in the States, I mean, there's a difference between choosing quality foods and not getting trapped by marketing, because now every single food, they're trying to do something with the label or the wording or something, whatever they can get away with to make it sound, healthier. And don't get me wrong, like anyone that follows me knows that I will eat certain things, like some grass fed and things like that. But there's also like knowing when it might be a good idea to spend the money on that and when it doesn't really matter. Like that's useful information, because there are plenty of things out there that it's really just marketing.
Like, the thing that comes to mind first and foremost to me is like organic bananas. Like how they're not sprayed with whatever, or like non-pesticide use bananas. Like, bananas are covered in a friggin' coating. So like as soon as you unwrap it, like it's just so funny. But this information isn't out there, right? Like as you said completely, like I do believe in just like as you said, some of the things that could be more, but like organic is such a blanket term, right? Like over we'll say the years, everything kind of switched when it went from gluten-free to everything being or omega-3 enriched. Like there was omega-3 enriched pasta that was being promoted heavily. I'm like, what? How are okay, sounds great, but then yeah, like seeing the stickers on things that say non-GMO, which even for the most part, as one of my clients, Colette, because she's a farmer and she was into the pesticide control and everything else, she was explaining to me that there's such unregulations to that, and it's not regulated in a sense of you could maybe use a chemical called Roundup, but you couldn't use this one. And so even that, like, what does organic mean? Like, does that mean that the animals are fed with X food, or that they're allowed to have not X food, or they're eating whatever? So there's just lots of misinformation and confusion on the entire topic.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're right. And there's some gray areas too that we as consumers probably aren't necessarily going to be able to really know the whole truth. It's just kind of using our best judgment. But I think we can go ahead and talk about the whole organic thing a little bit
Sure.
more. That's a cool topic. So honestly, when it comes to organic stuff, mainly talking about like produce, for example, fruits, veggies, things of that nature. I'm mostly, for the most part, if people want an idea of what might be worth spending the extra money on organic, is you can always use the clean 15 and dirty dozen list. And you can Google it. It's pretty accurate. It's for the most part, like it's a decent guideline. And exactly as Marty said, some things like who gives a shit if a banana gets sprayed with,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, and essentially that's what the list is going over. It just talks about, what things are, and it also depends, like, where are they harvested? Are they harvested in like a tropical region in smaller batches?
Yep.
Does the culture, like what culture is, harvesting them? Maybe they don't believe in using certain things. And so a lot of that makes a big difference. And that list is really helpful. If people want to buy some things organic, and then it's a little bit different too when you're talking about meat, because obviously I get asked that question sometimes, like about meats, chicken, beef, or proteins like eggs or whatever. And a really good rule of thumb on if you want to talk about if spending extra money on it is something that's much higher in fat, that might be worth buying organic.
Okay.
I simply say that just because most of the extra, and I'm going to use the word toxins. I don't care if anyone dislikes.
Go for it. You're gonna get booted off the podcast here, Austin. Just kidding. Go for it.
Fine. That's fine. They can. Is most of your extra toxins are stored in fat cells, and I'll give you a perfect example.
Yes.
It's the same in humans. It's the same in humans. There are people that lose a substantial amount of weight, or even us in this industry, where every time we do contest prep, we get sick. Well, we're dumping, part of that is obviously immune function can go down because it's taxing, but we're also dumping a lot of that extra shit that we store in our adipose tissue into the blood, and it's being metabolized, or we have to get rid of it, Yeah. So in animals, the same way. I mean, they're storing stuff. So if you do want to buy organic, look at your higher fat foods, maybe like your eggs and your fattier beef and things like that. Chicken, something like chicken, it's really doesn't matter because, there's not going to be any storage there. And you can look at grass fed almost in the same exact nature, because really the idea of grass fed is that can help improve the fatty acid profile, just because the animal's fed different. They're not fed a high omega-6 grain diet. The omega-6 grain diet's inflammatory. That's what fattens them up. That's what gets them ready for slaughter quicker, and gives them a higher yield as the farmer, whoever. But again, you don't really have to worry about the fatty acid profile all that much in something like egg whites, or something like chicken tenderloin or chicken breast. So that's the whole reason that you see people buy grass-fed beef, simply because it's fattier, So again, that's kind of knowing. I think it's hilarious and I'll throw a supplement out there, because I know people buy this, when people buy grass-fed whey isolate.
Oh,
for
my
what
God.
Fucking, it doesn't have any fat. Like, it might have one gram of fat, So I mean, you're literally getting no additional benefit in that fatty acid profile, because there's not any fat in it. So that one cracks. That's hilarious. And I see it on, and I'll let you jump in on this one too, but we were talking about pastured and free range and all that. Yep. I saw pastured, what was it? Pastured egg whites, like the liquid egg whites. I'm like, for what fucking reason? And I mean, unless of course they're using the egg whites that come from the pastured eggs, you know what I mean? Like from the same chickens. Okay.
Yes.
But again, the white is essentially a pure protein. There's very minimal of any other macro, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, you can jump in on that. That free range one's an interesting topic.
Yeah, like as I was saying to you kind of before the show here, is that we have free range and then we have free run in Canada here. And the free range just simply means that they are allowed out of the cage, that they can just be literally in the coop running around still eating their feed, or whatever you want to call it. Like you said, that's going to be higher in the omega-6, the inflammatory fatty acids and things like that. But again, it is chicken, but then free run is where they're allowed outside and they can eat bugs and they can kind of get sun from the just sunlight period, and potentially have a higher vitamin D level. But again, vitamin D is fat soluble. So, but there's so much, like, especially if you're it's not that eating is cheap to begin with, right? Carbs are cheap, like oatmeal, rice, or whatever, but meat can start to add up. And I know you guys have quite a few different natural stores down in like Trader Joe's and a couple of the other ones, and some of those prices can really, really add up. So if you're thinking about starting a nutrition plan, or you are starting a nutrition plan, and you're thinking, should I buy organic? Should I buy and the answer is really no. And so I remember it was quite some time ago, and like him or hate him, he's done some pretty good stuff for the industry. He's done some actually pretty poor stuff for the industry. It doesn't matter. But Lane Norton was one of the first ones, and I believe it was a chat with John Meadows, believe it or not, where Lane went over like all the vitamin absorption, all the mineral absorption, and whatever else of, we'll say, non-organic stuff versus organic, and there was no difference in terms of like the health profile. And like that was mind blowing when that happened, because this was a while ago and no one had really dove into that literature or read it correctly. And like, let's put it this way. No one is getting sick because they're eating non-organic meats. Now, could exactly like you said, could it make you healthier? Potentially, yeah, especially if you're consuming enough, or during contest prep, especially when the food isn't high or whatever, then yeah, you can either use supplementation or just pick something that's more organic in a sense. I love that you said the sickness and the fat, because, and I haven't said this in years because it's one of those things I just haven't really had to bring up, but when people would get sick during contest prep or doing any kind of phase of, we'll say, fat loss, just there was no flu going around or no cold going around, they're like, why the hell am I sick? And that's exactly it. You don't store carbs on your body. In a sense, you store fat, and this is where the sickness is going to lay from. So, but what kind of came up, two things that really stood out to me when you said it was about like where they can harvest the food or where they pick it. So even going as crazy as to the soil. Like there's parts of Asia, wherever, that the soil is much more irrigated, much more, we'll say, natural than over here, where our topsoil and our like, it just sucks in comparison. And this is what the animals will eat. This is what the fruit and the vegetables are being grown in, and that can make a pretty big damn difference, funny enough. So it's like I don't think this is even a thing, or maybe it is, but it's like getting a pineapple from Canada versus a pineapple from the US versus a pineapple from Hawaii. It's going to be not only better tasting, but you're going to get that better vitamin mineral content, or just it's just going to be different. And you're of course going to pay for that. Are they in season? Are they being man-made or whatever? And then the other funny one is probiotic yogurt, like because as soon as it goes through any of the processing and the temperature control and the pasteurization, all of the probiotic stuff is blown away in yogurt. So people say, yeah, I'm getting acidophilus or whatever from my yogurt. No, sorry, you're really not, because the heat is going to it's like using olive oil on a stove. As soon as it hits that smoke point, all of the benefits of the olive oil are gone. But yet we're being promoted this stuff because, yes, originally did the cows have the probiotic part to the yogurt and everything else that the yogurt is made from in the milk, but it's just gone as soon as you hit that pasteurization.
Yeah. So you're right. And it's another interesting little fact. You mentioned regions and where like harvesting and stuff. It's the whole, because people talk about pesticides and produce and things, and that's really one of the main, I guess, quote unquote, benefits. But the problem is there's a lot of like stuff that washes out into the soil. Even, and it's simple stuff like how they treat the roads. I mean, it snows like a bitch in Canada. Yep. You know, it's like how those roads get treated and all the chemicals and stuff like that. I mean, there's just so many little factors. So you will get, I'm not saying that there won't be any benefit. And like I mentioned, that list of the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, you're going to get less, you're going to get less chemical exposure, but that's not to say that you'll get none. And again, it's definitely, if we're prioritizing, like budget and things like that, it's not going to be the highest thing on the budget. I do think there are, like, I will have clients that they have the budget to do it, and I'll say, okay, this is what I would suggest putting your extra coin towards. You know what I mean? Like these certain fattier foods or this vegetable or this fruit, things like that. And I'm like, don't worry about the other stuff, because it really doesn't matter. So if you want to get that little extra, 0.5% or 1%, yeah, it's definitely an option. But there are, and to me, like, I'm not claiming that I know every single thing about this topic, because I think there are things that go on that we probably don't even know about, like in terms of, regulation and what can go into food and what can't go into food. Yeah. I don't think that we're necessarily fully informed, even the most researched person. So you just have to take it with a grain of salt. Like, I know out here, I'm not sure if it's used as heavily in Canada, but, Roundup, that's the biggest thing here.
Yep, it is here too. Yep, for sure.
So what the glyphosate, I believe is how you say it, which is, the chemical that people are typically worried about. Now, I've read a lot of interesting stuff in it, but it's so hard to get good information that's not biased and doesn't have an agenda. Like it's difficult to kind of pick through that stuff. And I've had conversations about this with people, like people that have actually had like glyphosate tests done. Like they can go through and do like a skin follicle or hair follicle or whatever, where it shows like, storage of this, chemical, not necessarily urine where you're excreting it. But I wish I knew more about it, because I do think that's one of the things that is kind of scary. It does sound scary. Like, hey, should we eat Roundup? I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't sound like we should, right? But again, is it as bad as we think? I'm not sure. And then you'll get the typical argument is, well, that's why we have a liver and kidneys and lymph glands and things to process this stuff. Yeah, that's great. But at the same time, it certainly doesn't hurt to reduce the toxic load if you can. I mean, you're only gonna eventually gonna be able to process so much shit. Like you're gonna, you could eventually have issues. And I will say that I've had people that they're just, stressed, and they have very poor, they're buying all the cheapest foods and this and that. And we do clean up some of those things, like mainly the big ones that I mentioned, not necessarily like buying every single thing organic and this and that. And they seem to feel better. Now, is that placebo? I don't know. Might be, could be. Could it be that their organs are functioning better? Could be. I don't know. So, you can take from that what you will, but I think that, I wish we knew a little bit more about it. I just don't think that we quite fully understand all the regulations and what's going to go into food in that regard.
So what comes to mind immediately to me is a lot like the supplement regulations. Is not only can, like, I think up here at the minimum, I think you can be 25% off the label claim, or at least 20%. So in other words, if you're claiming that there's 20 grams of protein in your whey protein, you're allowed to be 5 grams off of that. So you could have 5 grams of whatever in there, and that's still considered legal. But then here's the funny thing is, like, remember when the whole Prime Nutrition scandal came up, and there was like, 8 grams of histidine in their friggin' BCAAs or their whey protein, like, and then there was the amino acid spiking, and if anyone kind of remembers that. But where I'm going with this is that with the organic process too, or whatever, or even like the GMOs or the spraying of the pesticides, is that things are going to be sneaking by. People are still going to be using X pesticide when, like I said, that they can do that legally without having it. Like, that's what does organic mean, right? So, but then, so I'm just like you. I know enough about it. I feel that I can talk on it, but I'm by no means an expert, and I will still appeal to authority on it. But for the whole Roundup thing, what to my understanding is one of those. It's like, because I think it was the owner of Monsanto or something like that was saying that you can drink Roundup and you will be fine. And someone's like, okay, well, how about you drink Roundup? He goes, well, no, I'm not going to drink Roundup just because I said it's safe. It's just the fact that, and what comes to mind to me too is just like artificial sweeteners. It's one of those things that, sure, don't be downing 600 cans of Diet Coke a day, but also for you to think that they're causing cancer and that they're the evidence is not there. Like, and I've seen enough of these papers, and I've seen enough of people that are much better researchers than me that have dove into these papers, and like between the abstract or other things, it's like here's what they kind of came out with for the artificial sweetener thing. It was certain really bad forms of artificial sweetener that we don't use a lot of were being injected into rats, and they were getting cancer. Okay, and they apparently directly translated this to humans consuming not even a 100th of that amount in an oral way, so it did have the organs to kind of go through that. And so that's where they were getting a vast majority of this research. And I hope a lot of people are going, oh, really, when they have that. So, like, if you see someone with a Coke Zero and you're going to immediately think, oh, that's going to be giving you cancer, screw off. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be really aggressive, and I hope people get a little bit angry when I kind of say that. I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence or kind of trying to put down anyone's knowledge or whatever, but it's, unless you have done something more than a quick Google article research on, what is that, the HuffingtonPost.com, Like,
Yeah.
you need to see more than this, right? You need to, like, have you actually done the research? Do you know anybody that is in the hospital because of aspartame? And it's like, oh, but then it's just like people were, there was, you'll look at things and like every time it's like someone was in liver failure because of aspartame, but then they were an alcoholic for the last 12 years too. Oh, sure, that had nothing to do with it at all. It was completely and entirely the friggin' aspartame that they've been having from their Diet Coke every second day. So it's something like, you can even probably tell that I get fired up about this stuff too, right? Like, and I think it was, I think who published not published the paper, but at least brought it to my attention years ago was Dave Palumbo, put out the paper, and it was like, it's something like you needed to consume 600 cans of Diet Coke a day for 3 months to get any kind of buildup of aspartame in like the fat or whatever, or to have it even be considered a concern. So these are just something to think about and kind of take home. Of course, Austin and I are never going to be telling you directly what to do, but it's just, we'll say it's one of those moderation things in a sense of, yeah, you know, if there's ways that you can clean it up, if you can buy organic meat, grass-fed meat, or eat grass-fed butter, for God's sake, because that will have the vitamin K2 in it. That won't really have it in a kind of, we'll call it, I'll actually say it, unnatural butter, butter that's on testosterone. Just kidding. You know what I mean? But so you just don't need to go that crazy with it, that now your grocery bill is going from $150 a week to $300 a week. Like, and I love that you said that if they've got the means, here's the ones that you can kind of focus on. But will you be that much significantly healthier? I'm with you on like the 2% or something like that, if that's even going to be a factor.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other things that are going to be a factor, and I think it's a relatively good topic, at least within our industry, because we are going to have a lot of people that do want that extra percent, right? Because it's just it's the nature of what we do. Now, it's probably of minimal concern to a lot of quote unquote normal people that just need to eat less, you know? So that's, you know, it's a pyramid of priorities for sure. You know, it's kind of like, you look at it the same way as you would look at flexible dieting. You know, start with calories.
Yep.
And then macros, and then, you know, and then food selection, and then, you know, it's all these things. And obviously, like, there's other things within food selection, like digestion and all that. But that's more so, are you eating something that doesn't digest well? Not necessarily that it's organic or not. So yeah, it's low on the pyramid, or high, right? Because the top of the pyramid's the skinny part. So yes, it's high. It's high on the pyramid. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things we wanted to get through is just you know, watch for marketing, as well. Like we were talking about the free range and things of that nature, and the grass-fed whey isolate, and, you know, and stuff saying that it's non-GMO, and especially, hey, if you are new at this, you know, in terms of like this being nutrition and all that stuff, lifestyle, and you're listening to the podcast, and you are going to see, you're going to be bombarded with a lot of things like label claims and things. This is a significant source of this vitamin.
Yeah.
Well, great. It has 100% of your daily value of vitamin C, which doesn't really mean jack shit when it has, you know, 60 grams of sugar. So, you know, it's like that stuff's obviously relevant too. Now, most of the people counting macros and things like that and are pretty seasoned. Like, that's really not, we know better, you know, hopefully, I would hope. But yeah, there's a lot, man. And it's every single thing under the sun now. They realize, I think that a lot of the companies, you know, in terms of marketing, realize like, hey, we can even make our not so good food appeal to that crowd, because it's such a thing now. You know what I mean? There are a lot more people that are paying attention to those things and want that extra better choice of food, even though it might literally be the same exact thing you get in the store brand, you know, the generic store brand. And that's another thing, just kind of a little topic on that. I find a lot of the grocery chains around here now, especially like the bigger chains, if you do want to get the certain things organic and grass fed, a lot of them carry their own in-store brand now. So it's literally, I know for me, I can get certain things organic or grass fed or whatever in the store brand, and it's cheaper than the regular form in the name brand.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And it's awesome. You know what I mean? Because there's no middleman, it's coming right from their farms or manufacturer, whatever, however that's working, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I think that now that a lot of that stuff's more widely available, it isn't necessarily that much more expensive, like certain produce and things like that. I might pay, a quarter more a pound or something pretty insignificant. Whereas, 10 years ago, you would have paid a super premium on that stuff just because it was, there just wasn't as much available. But you can also do things like, if people are curious about, buying more of this organic or grass fed or stuff like that, do some research online, like see where there might be a local farm that will allow you to buy. If you have a deep freeze, stuff like that, you can get, there's some good, I know at least out by me, there's several farmers and stuff. You can get the different steaks and grass fed this and that. And there's farmers markets and all kinds of stuff. And you can get a lot of like small batch stuff that people make and, and grow that's organic, and it's cheaper than in the store just because you're buying it direct from the consumer. So, or from the manufacturer. So that stuff's, you can get a little savvy with it in terms of like saving money, because not everyone's going to have $300 a week just to spend on their grocery bill. I mean, heck, I know a lot of people that are spending less, that try to spend less than 100. They get real stingy with it. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole purchasing process.
Yeah, like even as you're talking there, like I just remember I had a girl that lived, a client when I was personal training, that lived right next to a farmer, and I think I could get like a dozen or 18 eggs for I think 68 cents, whereas up here they were like $1.99 or something. So that is coming back to me now that yes, like if you have someone that is close to you, it's like, because like you said, they're cutting out the middleman, and even this exact same farmer apparently when he was at the farmer's market would have to sell them for $1.49, and that was because he had to pay for the booth. You know what I mean? To set up shop and kind of everything. So it's especially if it's close, it's not that too far out of your way. It could be worth your time, right? And I love how you said labels, because it came to my head. Even so, it's like when you notice, remember impact carbs.
Oh,
right? Net and impact carbs versus like actual carbs. It's like when just because it wasn't fiber or because it didn't release immediately, the label was allowed to say like 15 carbs versus 25. Like, what a bunch of shit. Like just like, oh my God. I remember, I think EAS was the first person that put that out there, like in their Mayo, whatever it was, bars or whatever. Like, I remember just roaring laughing, and because it would say something as outrageous as four carbs, or like, and then it would say like an asterisk, and then it would have in the bottom right hand corner of the back where you could barely peel the flap off, and it would say net carbs, and it wouldn't even have to explain to you what that meant. And so here was people doing macros saying, oh yeah, I'm only having four carbs per bar, when it was 25 and 30, and they're wondering why they're blowing way over their totals for the day or whatever, right? So, but I love how you said too that people are they're paying more attention to this stuff. And I think there was a survey done 3-4 years ago of green companies, like as in they were doing recycling. They were getting their products made by recycled goods. And so people, when they were promoting that, especially if they were really doing it, or they even just surveyed saying, hey, would you buy from a green company versus like a company that just threw everything in the trash? And they said it's something like over 60% said that they would pick the green company. And so this is, if you're, you want to go down the health road or whatever, and if the means are there and it's not that crazy of a expense, and you would ask someone, like especially me, would you buy organic if it was the same price? Absolutely. Even if it was a little tiny bit more, like we've been kind of echoing this entire podcast, is yes, absolutely, right? Because it is not only going to make a slight bit of a difference, as we're kind of repeating ourselves here, but it's one of those why not things, right? Especially sometimes if you see them, it's going to go on sale because maybe the organic stuff is going to go bad quicker. And what I wanted to kind of talk to you a bit about too is that if we didn't have certain GMOs, we would not be alive as a human race. just because of how quickly we're going through things and all of that. But then the new types of bugs and super bugs that we're getting, like a lot of the farms here in Canada, they won't actually be able to get insurance for their crops if they don't use certain pesticides because the bugs would eat them. And so it's just kind of pointless, because now let's say a bad, I'm not trying to think of a bug, like I want to say termites, but I know that's for wood, but let's say we'll call them vegetable termites, are roaming around being bullies and eating like all the crops and like the corn and the lettuce and whatever. That's a real concern there. And so, and the same thing, like I said, even about things going spoiling or rotting. Like you can't have that if you're going to the grocery store 2 and 3 times a week. Some people can't do that, and we already talked about too. One of the questions that we had on one of the podcasts was about fresh versus frozen. Like, if you can break the bank buying all your vegetables fresh. Like, sure, there isn't frozen mushrooms, of course there's not, but there are, like, there's frozen green beans, there is frozen asparagus, and you are not going to be losing that much nutritional value on this stuff. So it is like, I love how you said about that list there. You can kind of pick your battles there too, and of course you can drop us a line and ask us kind of any questions about any kind of this stuff, because that's what we're literally here for, is to kind of help on that too, right? But we can kind of go into too, like I even said about the protein bars there too, and we were talking about beforehand, like I forget the gentleman's name, but he has something called the best bar ever, which was we'll call it the organic, or at least like we'll call it spoilable, or it could rot. It wasn't something that has a shelf life of 2 years, but so it was just better for you. And so a lot of this stuff, like, and we'll go into the topic here, as I know you'll have a lot to say on it too, of man-made, in a sense of like what's coming from a box, in terms of what's coming from kind of the perimeter. Like that's one of the way that I was taught to shop, if you want to be quote unquote healthy, is shop the perimeter of the store. This will usually be where the fresh stuff is, versus shopping down the aisles where a lot of the box stuff is coming from, where the nutrition won't necessarily be as high as kind of where it is. But like it's if they have to infuse things too, like I don't know how they really do the process of this, but like I was talking about, there was omega-3 pasta, for God's sake, or calcium and vitamin D enriched whatever. It's like, not only that, but is it the right forms of these vitamins? How are they doing it? What is the man-made process behind that too, right? And but again, like there are gonna be things. It's like minute rice versus wild rice, like, especially with we were talking about the whole carbs, there's not the fat to it there too. Like I will full on tell you that I've bought minute rice for years, and the reason why is because not only was I a poor student, but there was no gigantic difference in the health quality of this stuff. It's like, especially because I was trying to save the most amount of money on things anyways, but like to buy, we'll call it the fancy rice, it just was not worth my time or worth my budget. Like, but then, not saying that like jasmine rice or wild rice is an astronomical amount more, but I was saving every dollar I could. And so for me to buy organic meat or grass-fed meat at that time was just not going to happen for me at that any kind of given time. So yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of the whole man-made and whatever else processes?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because now you see, you called it infused. I think a lot here we call it fortified.
That's the term too, fortified. Perfect. Yeah. Yep. Especially with milk. I see like orange juice and milk fortified with whatever vitamins. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots. I mean, they fortify everything now. So like they take a lot of processed foods, and you'll see a lot of processed foods, and then they'll include like a full vitamin and mineral panel within the food. You know what I mean? Like they'll put 50% of your daily value of damn near everything. And while that sounds cool, there are downsides. I mean, downsides being, you mentioned like certain forms of vitamins. There are, like, we don't necessarily have to go super deep into it, but they're like getting into the nitty gritty of vitamin absorption and things like that. There are certain forms that are definitely better than others. And that's the same reason that not all multivitamins are created the same, So, that's when you can get vitamins and minerals and micronutrients, I guess would be a good word for it, through foods. It's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It's a pretty good thing. A lot of these foods are lacking any kind of nutritional value, I guess you could call it, and that's why they fortify them. So, yeah, I mean, you're likely going to have better results in terms of vitamin and mineral status if you get them through the actual foods that they're designed to be eaten from, because now you also have things like the cofactors and digestive enzymes and all these little things that are contained within the food itself, that they're there for a reason. They're there because you need them to absorb the nutrients. And just because they put a vitamin in something doesn't mean you're going to absorb it. And you see, I know a lot of people will take multivitamins and even take good brands. You know, we'll talk about like a Life Extension or Thorne or brands like that, where they use high bioavailable forms of the vitamins. Like they're using the right forms of the B vitamins and vitamin D and all that. So they're good. They're awesome to use. That's fine if you need them. But that doesn't mean that you can't have vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Like that's a thing that I rarely hear people talk about. And I'm not saying I've seen it a lot. It definitely wouldn't be a lot. It's a small percentage. Let's see, maybe 10 to 15%. But I do see vitamin and mineral deficiencies in some people that are taking multivitamins and maybe even eating like flexible dieting and using like some of these fortified foods and things like that. That's just because it's an absorption issue. And when we can get them through food or take them through supplementation, but in a very specific form, they do better. And it just that, people don't check for this stuff. They're normally not looking at their lab work and getting vitamin and mineral panels done. And even if they are, like, now you have to look into like fat soluble. A lot of that stuff stores within the body. So just because you get your blood tested doesn't mean that that's actually telling you the whole story. Water soluble, is going to be a little bit different, but I can't even tell you like how many people I've had with B vitamin deficiencies. It's on paper, you'd think that's pretty much nearly impossible, considering the best source of B vitamins is probably meat, and most of our population eats a shitload of that. Yeah. That's a majority of their diet for protein. So I do see that sometimes. So yeah, the food, definitely watch that, and and that's like the other marketing thing. Like, if you are somebody that uses flexible dieting and like, or you want to fit a protein bar in to your macros or whatever, that stuff's fine. It's just that, realize that you're going to benefit more from, oh man, people are going to kill me after this. You're going to benefit more from whole food. Oh,
whole food. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Clean. I'm just going to call it clean food to make it, to make me upset. Yeah. And again, we're talking about, and this is coming from me, where I like certain carbs that I use. There's things that I'll use that are a little more processed and stuff and do fall under that category. That's fine. But I have all my bases covered within, everything else. So don't think that, people don't think that stuff's not possible. And you're, especially, when we're talking about people losing body fat and contest prep and stuff where we're eating pretty minimal calories, like, you need those nutrients. I mean, you're basically creating a starvation state anyhow, and you're not getting much food. You could eat a lot of processed food on a 5,000 calorie diet and still probably get all your micronutrients, but you could not get them all if you're eating 1,000 calorie diet. You know what I mean? So I think that's just something that people don't necessarily take into consideration.
Yeah, so the things that come to mind immediately are for instance, the form I remember it just sticks out to me was magnesium. I think the most, like, you can buy the grocery store brand of I think it's usually magnesium oxide, and you want to talk about giving you the shits, go have a bunch of magnesium oxide versus magnesium chelate or magnesium citrate, which people will usually do a heck of a lot better off of. That's the form that your body likes. And like you said, there's not a lot of education on this, because why wouldn't the grocery stores put the cheapest form out there? Because it's still magnesium, right? That's like saying car. And now you've got a Honda Civic versus a McLaren. Well, there's a heck of a not putting down Honda Civic because it's a great car, but it's not a McLaren. Like, it's just that also, what do you put in the car? Like, it's like I have a love-hate relationship with the analogies of cars, but it's like, if you've got a nicer car and you're putting in crappier gas, just potentially, like, I don't know a bunch about this, but you're putting in crappier oil, or you're not even getting maintenance done on the car and you expect the car to run perfectly, this is something to consider. Like I love how you mentioned the contest prep thing too, is that I will have people supplement more during the last phases of contest prep because like we said, that you can potentially get sick due to the body fat being liberated off the body, but now you're not getting the correct amount of vitamins and minerals that you would, or micronutrients that you would if you were eating, we'll say at maintenance or above. The other ones that kind of come to mind here, to kind of give some tips, is probiotic. You would swear that I worked for the company called Garden of Life, the amount that I promote it. I literally don't even say probiotic when I give people plans. I will say Garden of Life's Primal Defense, because I have seen people buy crappier probiotics and they won't get the same digestive benefits. They'll still have a bloated stomach, or they won't get, versus having Primal Defense. It's the same thing with digestive enzymes. Like I've seen people take crappier enzymes and nothing starts happening, but if they use a higher quality one, once again I'll reference both Garden of Life's, I think it's called Omegazyme, and then Enzymatica's digestion gold or whatever, and it was too funny. I was talking to Dr. Scott Stevenson. He's like, this is my go-to, especially when I start losing my enzymes production during prep. And so those two, and when I have people, they'll buy the cheaper enzymes, I'm like, listen, please, just for the next 3-4 weeks, buy this higher quality brand. And then they're like, wow, it's kind of mind blowing to them just how much. And then even that could be said with whey protein. If you have a sensitive stomach, or you have any kind of lactose intolerance, and you buy whey concentrate is what it's called, which is sometimes in between, I think 78 and 83% whey protein, you can have some stomach problems. Whereas if you get an isolate or a hydrolyzed caseinate or something like that is a higher quality, or it's like treated better in terms of the cold pressed, what do you call it, processing or whatever, or it's more organic. Just teasing. You don't want organic whey. It's with a bunch of I love that one.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but just it's just that's not going to make the difference. Whereas the quality is, and it's like, yeah, that how it's treated versus, yeah, like or organic whey. Like, what is this? The cows that are eating clean and now they're pumping out the whey. Oh my god, I love it. I love it, and that's just one of those things to just not focus on. But yeah, when it comes down to quality of the supplements, like if you buy Centrum, which is a very popular multivitamin, especially which is wild that it's pushed so much towards adults or pushed towards the elderly, when if you were to go take a look at the natural form of vitamins or minerals, it does not come in a white pressed tablet. Like, just the funniest shit for that, especially for like something as all encompassing as a multivitamin or a multi-mineral. And I think I've already mentioned this one too on our supplement podcast, but back in the day when I was buying Animal Pack, my piss would be that highlighter neon yellow, and I know it was just not absorbing, like, at all. I was just pissing it out entirely. And there's a lot of speculation that people will say that you will piss out your vitamins or whatever, period, which is just flat out not true, especially if you have the right form of things and you're not super saturating. Like, it's not to put Animal Pack and the Animal Company down. It's just I think there's a lot of things wrong with Animal Pack, and I saw it myself, and I just didn't know back as a young 18-year-old man. I just thought it was neat that my pee was highlighter yellow, and that could probably glow in the dark if I really tried to take a look at it. But for the supplements though, okay, yeah, enzymes, probiotic, certain forms of the minerals, like and like Austin's already talked about the B vitamin stuff, is that you don't need every freaking supplement on the planet. You definitely don't. That's marketing, and that's buying into that too, especially if you are eating clean. I love that you said it first, so now I'll say it and you'll get yelled at instead of me. But because like I remember when I first heard that joke, it's like, what does clean eating mean? It means that you're spraying all your food with Windex first. Now your food. Now you're having clean eating because you sprayed it with Windex. You sprayed your Pop-Tarts with Windex, and now you've got a clean eating Pop-Tart.
Yeah.
Oh man, just yeah. How funny is that though, right? But yeah, that's kind of what we're after here. Like the entire kind of theme of the podcast is just moderation, pick your battles, and kind of don't break the bank on it, and do some research into these companies. Like if you look up Garden of Life, like not only have they won awards from like their quality control, but they have like GMP, the good manufacturing process. They've got so much going on for them. There's a reason why they've only been around for a long time, but they don't make shit products. They don't have every single vitamin and mineral out there. They have what works, and they refine their formula to make it better, and they just have got it going on, right? Like, I can't recommend them more, and I probably won't stop recommending them for a long time, along with Jarrows is really good. Like you mentioned Thorn, you mentioned Life Extension, like those are all great. Even for the most part now, the orange bottles, these are good companies, right? Like they have not only will been around forever, but you won't see them being sued. You won't see them making outlandish claims like they'll say on there for their magnesium. Will say like sleep support or like better mood calming, which they're not saying will make your mood and cure your depression and now you know what your better relationship with your kids because of our supplement. Like they're just not making these claims, and it's and that's even. I'm glad I kind of brought that up because that's going to even be the same thing like you said about if you were going and buying a box item and it's saying like it's going to cure your cancer or it's going to be doing this. Like no, a different brand of packaged instant potatoes is not going to be that much more miraculous than the other brand of instant packaged potatoes. Just because it's just not the scope of the product. It's just not what it's not only meant to do, but it's not the point of it. Like how you said that you will buy some processed carbohydrates or processed food. So do I. Like how I even mentioned about me buying like the white rice. Like it's like, especially for things that are like pretty much we'll call them nutrient devoid, such as white rice. Like white rice is not a heavy hitting powerhouse for vitamins and minerals. It's just not what it does. It doesn't carry a lot of this stuff. So you need to make it up in kind of other areas, either by eating the correct type of the food or by using the correct type of supplementation.
Yeah, I like that you said nutrient devoid. That's perfect way to put it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be too worried about something that wouldn't really provide me nutrition, even if it was organic. You know, I don't care. It doesn't make much difference in that regard. So, yeah, I mean. There's a lot of stuff to sift through out there for sure. I think that this probably provided some insight into what you may, if you want to step up your selection game a little bit, what you might want to consider investing in. And there's other little topics you could go real deep into. I mean, there's people you will go way down the rabbit hole, like looking at preservatives and dyes and things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of shit, but it's here. My rule of thumb, and you can take all this, and this kind of goes with everything we've talked about. If you have the means to do it, it certainly won't hurt to reduce the burden on your body. It won't hurt. So, if that's something that you want to do within reason, it's definitely not a bad thing. It's kind of like we say the upper limit for artificial sweeteners it's insanely high. I'm sitting here drinking a Diet A&W cream soda right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And right. Yeah. I'm never going to hit that limit. Like I'm nowhere close, of course. Yeah. Now, if I am doing 10% of that limit and then I'm doing 10 and then I'm consuming 10% of 50 other highly, I'm going to use the word toxic again, chemicals. Now that could add up maybe, right? You know what I mean? So you're taking a little bit from everywhere. It's still something. So if you want to dig in deeper, it certainly can't hurt your cause. I think that's kind of the takeaway message. But at the same time, just know what, don't be fooled by labeling and buy things that are really not beneficial at all.
Yep. I think that's a really nice way to kind of end the podcast here, because I don't have anything else really to kind of dive into at the moment. I hope we kind of cleared up. I hope we kind of cleaned up just, being funny, right? Yeah. Hope we kind of cleared up and cleaned up kind of a lot of misinformation and kind of speculation. I hope actually we caused a lot of thought-provoking statements or thoughts in your head about this stuff. And again, feel free to jot them in the Facebook comments, the Instagram comments, or to our whatever, and we'll do our best to go over them. But yeah, I think that's really good on, we'll call it the super organic GMO free range free run podcast. And so from myself and Austin here at the Mind Body Broadcast, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.